Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, welcome to my channel. And hit that subscribe button, hit that notification button, drop a comment down below to show some love. If you're going to hate, make sure it's good. Make sure it's something that's true. I mean, I have an 8 head instead of a 4 head. What else can you say? I talk too much. I move too much. Just say something that makes sense and I will support you in that. So bring on the hate. Now, let's get into chapter 6. It's really short, but I have some commentary on it. But it begins with the words, the mistress. And it starts off with a quote from Rose Kennedy. And it says, birds sing after a storm. Why shouldn't people feel as free to delight in whatever sunlight remains to them? So Christopher did not tell the FBI that as soon as Nikki told him that she wanted a first with him, that is when he first started planning the murders. He wanted to kill the baby so he could give Nikki that first. And it was so sad because Shanann was super excited to give him a son. And he was planning to take that baby's life before it even came into the world. And he did. And it was the son that he always wanted. And it would complete their family and give them the boy and 2 girls. And Shanann thought that he would be excited that it was a baby boy. And that he would start feeling differently towards his family because she felt and sensed the separation. And at first, Nikki told Christopher that she did not want any children. And yet she was the one that said that she wanted to give him his first son later. So he wasn't wanting to get rid of the baby, he says. But he wanted everyone to know that it wasn't because he thought it wasn't his. He knew that baby was his. And that's why he wanted to get rid of the baby, because he did not want Nikki to find out that Shanann was having this boy, because Nikki really wanted to give him his first. And so Shanann was fighting for the marriage, all the while Christopher was trying to destroy it. And he said that he would not give their marriage another chance, and that he wouldn't even talk to her about their problems. And he wouldn't be honest with her. So he did not try to talk to Shanann until the morning that he killed her. And he says he just couldn't confront her. Now, as soon as the girls left for North Carolina, Chris had this sense of freedom, and Nikki latched onto him fast. And that even though he was married with 2 children, she still was relentless about being with Christopher by herself and being number 1. She wanted him to stay every night in July, and she did not include Christopher in her circle of friends until right before the murders. They were talking about it. And that in the past, Nicole had been in an abusive relationship, and that she told him she had to delete her social media because of that. But he wasn't sure if that was true or if she was hiding from someone, because she sent all of her mail to her dad's house so no one could ever look her up. Now, the medications that she was using, he said he suspected it was for bipolar, but we have to remember that Ronnie and Chris are always throwing this bipolar word around. Ronnie said that Shanann was bipolar. He also said that, that was their quick judgment on Shanann, was to call her bipolar. And so they were also saying that Nikki was bipolar. So I just think that that's an excuse for them to not have respect for people that they should. And so instead of thinking about these people's real feelings and what was making them be so emotional, they just chalked it up to bipolar, because they just don't like confrontation. And so it's easier to say someone's bipolar. So they said that she only went to Chris's house twice, July 4th and the 14th. And that on July 4th, Christopher was off work for the holiday, and that he had stayed the night at Nikki's and slept in the next morning. So he spent the night on July 3rd. He wakes up on July 4th. He has all these missed calls from Shanann, and he freaks out because he knows that she's probably pissed because he usually wakes up early in the morning. And he went outside, and he knew that she was going to be really mad. So he went outside to talk to her. And that when he talked to her, she was beyond mad. She was furious. And that he decided to go home for the rest of the day. And that he went back in to tell Nikki, who was in the shower. And then right after Shanann got angry with him, Nikki was angry with him. Nikki was pissed off because they had made plans to hang out that day. And he said no, he was going home. And that is when Nikki realized that she was not number one in Chris's life. And Christopher felt like maybe this was him having second thoughts. And that had Nikki just left him alone after seeing that, maybe he would have turned around and not done this. But Nikki let him go home and then just showed up at his house, okay? She had never been invited to this house before, and she just decided to go there, and she had no right to go to this home. No matter what, she should have never stepped foot in there and should have stayed out in her truck if she insisted on going there. Text them to come outside. But she should have had some kind of tact when it come to going up in Shanann's house. Shanann didn't even know about Nikki, and she didn't get the opportunity to go into Nikki's house and see her personal things. And so it was, if Nikki is guilty of anything whatsoever, it is she should have never went to that woman's home. Now, I have some personal opinion on Nikki as we get through the book and the author brings these things up. I will give my personal opinion, but number one, she should have never drove herself to Shanann's house. And so she used the excuse that she was there to help him plan a healthy protein diet with this app that she was showing him. And she says that, Chris tells the author that Nikki did not look around the house that day. She just came. And that she just couldn't allow Christopher to be alone. She knew that if he went back to that house and he saw the pictures of his children and he saw his wife that he thought was so beautiful, that maybe he would have second thoughts, maybe he would feel guilty. And so she made sure not to leave him alone to have any time to think about his actions. And so she didn't want him to think that his life was too good to give up. And so Chris says maybe he still had love deep inside of him for the family. And Nikki was afraid that being at home and alone would bring this love back up to the surface that he was trying to pretend like wasn't there. But on July 14th, they were heading home from that museum that they went to, and they decided to stop by Chris's house on the way home. Now, Nikki should have stayed in the car. She should not have gotten out. She should have already felt bad for being in that house one time, so she should have waited for Chris in the car to come out. She shouldn't have been there, period, but seeing as this was already going on, she should not have went back into that house for a second time. It was like she was almost trying to be seen going into the house, that she wanted the neighbors to see her truck. She wanted the neighbors to see her there so she could blow it up for Chris herself. She says that she played with Dieter and that he led her upstairs. That is that dog's home. That dog can go anywhere in that house and you are not supposed to follow him. How do you know he wasn't going upstairs to look for Shanann because he thought you were weird being there? Why did you follow the dog upstairs? You had no right whatsoever to be in that house, let alone go upstairs where his private wife's bedroom was and where her children slept. So I maybe go downstairs in the basement. You thought that Chris slept in the basement. So you had no reason to go upstairs. And to have Chris protect you and say it's because the dog led you up there is just ridiculous. Okay? So she said that she could see things once she got up there of his life, the pictures of Bella, Celeste, and Shanann. And when she came downstairs, she had this frozen look on her face. She was so confused. And it was the first time she had seen the life that he was living and the family that would be broken to pieces because of their affair. And Chris saw the look of despair on her face, and he put his arms around her and led her to the couch, and they laid there and talked. And Nicole said, quote, you have all this and more than most people. Why are we doing this? Why are we doing this? Are you willing to give all this up? Is your relationship with your wife that bad? He told her that he and Shanann had drifted apart and that they didn't talk anymore, and that he wasn't even sure if he believed this in his own head, but he was telling her this just so she could see deficit in their relationship and believe him. And he also told her that before he started seeing her, that him and Shanann had planned on having another baby. And this was another sign that he was having second thoughts. Because why would he tell her that? You know, he just saw that she was upset because he had a happy, perfect life. And then he turns around and tells her that they were planning to have a baby. So this should have blown up right here. And Nikki should have been strong and left and said, well, if that's the case, then I don't want to interfere. But anyway, he said that she freaked out and started yelling at him. Why the F are you doing with me? What the F are you doing with me then? She said. And he said that he had not seen that side of Nikki before. This was the first time he had seen her get really angry, besides when she got upset when he left on July 4th, and that he took notice of this. And Nikki told him, your relationship couldn't be that bad if you and Nikki were trying to have a Nikki told Chris that your relationship could not have been that bad if you and Shanann were trying to have a baby before we met. And so he tried to get her to stay, but she got pissed off and left the house. She did not leave the address. She sat in her truck texting Chris for 30 minutes until he said that he texted her back and talked her off the cliff. So he said that he wanted to make her feel better, and that she wanted him to come after her and chase her, and that he did not. And he said that it really turned him on that he was able to talk her off the ledge, and that they were able to talk about their problems, and so that it turned him on. Yeah, that's what he said. That he was allowed to be able to calm her down, and that he did not want the other baby with Shanann, and so he told her that, and that made her happy. And he withheld information, he is saying here, that she was already pregnant with that boy, because he did not want Nikki to know, because she had already said she wanted that first with him. So she would have been devastated had she found out that Shanann was pregnant with a boy. And I don't believe this. I feel like she had some kind of inkling that something was going on, but we'll get into that as we go through the book. And she said that he told her that the plans to have the baby was before they even started talking. And that he thought it had been a possible way to save their marriage, but it wasn't working. And he really didn't think that Shanann was looking at the pregnancy as that. But I do believe that she thought that it would bring them closer together, especially once she found out it was the boy that he always wanted. And Shanann always thought that they decided together to have the baby. So, and I honestly do think that they did, and they were blessed to be getting a baby boy, but Chris just doesn't see this in his own warped mentality. And so Nikki came back in the house, and she told him that she had never met a man that was willing to talk out their problems and smooth things over, and that she just couldn't believe that he would talk things through with her, and that she'd never experienced that in other relationships. And that he said, ironically, Chris said that he never did this with Shanann. And that he thought that she wouldn't listen to him, and that he did not give her a chance. That they never really talked about things, that he just let her make all the decisions. And Nikki asked him to come over to her house like nothing had ever happened after this. And once they got back to her house, they made love. She tried to make it hot and passionate and did things that normally would turn him on. But this time their lovemaking felt different. And Chris says that he just felt the guilt rush back into him and that he did not want to be there. And that they normally made love 3 to 4 times a day. But after that argument, it went down to 1 to 2 times a day. And that when they made love, it felt very different after that. And he said that when they were finished making love, that she told him that she had only gotten mad because she wanted to give him his first. And she told him that when you told me you and your wife were trying to have a baby, it made me really mad and it scared me. That's Nikki's words. And that made him more confident in their relationship with her. And Christopher and Nikki then went to the races together on July 21st. And then they went camping on July 28th and 29th up in the mountains. And so, honestly, I feel like if there's no evidence that Nikki was not involved in these murders, she definitely played a part. Now, this Oxycontin that everybody is saying that Shanann got in North Carolina, it would not have shown up on her toxicology report that many days later. An Oxycontin can only stay in your system 3 to 5 days. So Chris's original story where he said that he gave it to her the morning of the murders, he did, okay? There's no way that Oxycontin would have shown up in her toxicology report 10 days later from North Carolina. So yes, I do believe he gave it to her in North Carolina, but I also believe that he gave it to her the morning of the murders. And that's why she was drowsy. And that's when he tried to kill her. And that's why she couldn't move. Because there is no way that it would have stayed in her system all the way up until August 13th. So he had to give it within 3 to 5 days of him murdering her. Okay? And so Chris is still lying. And it's really hard to believe in his testimony and his newfound faith when he is continuing to lie. And he tried to tell the truth at the beginning of the book from what it looked like, and then he backtracked and said that he did not give her that the morning of the murders. And he did. And I honestly feel like he was continuing to give it to her because that's why she was so sick when she went to Arizona. Not only the pregnancy, but she was also going through a form of withdrawal. Her being on that pill when she was with Chris and then not taking any on Saturday and Sunday in Arizona would have made her withdraw and just sick. And especially if he was giving it to her more than those 2 times. She would have built up a dependency to it, and so would have the baby, and it would have just been awful for her. I can't imagine feeling an 80 milligram Oxycontin and not knowing that it was given to you and it wasn't normal. I mean, she would have never been able to put that in her head that Chris would do that to her, especially how quiet and normal and calm he was. So that thought never crossed her mind that he was drugging her. But he was, you guys. The only way I can stand firm on this is because I know by being a recovering addict myself, I was addicted to 30 milligram Percocets after I had my botched surgery. And I was addicted to those for 4 years. And those are other videos that I will come into and talk to you guys about. And we'll go live and you can ask me anything. I am an open book. On November 4th of this year, I will be 2 years sober. So I know all about oxycodone because that was my drug of choice, which is Percocet. And we don't know if Chris gave her Oxycontin or oxycodone. We just know that it was an oxy. But the 80 milligrams only comes in Oxycontin. So they do not make an 80 milligram Percocet. And he would have had to given her 8 10s or 3 30s to be able to do that. And I don't think Shanann would have taken 3 pills thinking it was headache medicine. So there you go. That's something to think about. And I am an open book again. As I said, I am a survivor. I made it through that, and it was the worst hell I've ever been through in my entire life. And I will give you guys that story one day. But I know that that does not stay in your system from North Carolina to August 13th. So tell the truth, Chris. When are you going to finally repent and tell the full truth?